Gas prices explode, state budget disasters sweep the nation, and now this.
Millions of Americans are still at risk of losing their homes.
Can you afford 4 more? The left-wing media uses the Tea Party to divide the GOP.
Is the Tea Party chasing the broader GOP off the cliff?
Will their strategy work? Frank Luntz is here with the answer. Congress has till March 18th to avoid a government shutdown, but the two sides couldn't be further apart. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann is here with the latest from D.C.
The perfect something, the perfect everything.
Plus, Charlie Sheen is back on the small screen broadcasting bizarre web videos, and we have the tapes. We are on the road to 2012. Hannity starts right here, right now. And more bad news for Americans. With summer just around the corner, oil prices spiked to almost $107 a barrel. Now, that's up 26% from just 3 weeks ago. And once again, this administration is standing on the sidelines. When asked whether the president would tap into our strategic oil reserves, White House Chief of Staff Bill Daley couldn't give a straight answer.
The issue of the reserves is one we're considering. It is something that only is done and has been done on very rare occasions. There's a bunch of factors that have to be looked at, and it is just not the price.
All right, so as the White House considers its options, get ready to empty your wallet at the gas pump. And that's not the only frightening economic news facing the nation. Treasury Secretary, tax cheat Tim Geithner delivered this sobering message to Congress.
The housing market of the United States is still in a very difficult state. The damage caused by this crisis is still deep and very broad. Even with the economy growing again, it's going to take a long time for us to repair the damage caused by the crisis.
And even the New York Times is offering up evidence that the president's policies are failing, noting that businesses all across the state of New Hampshire are hurting because, quote, at many workplaces here, the rising cost of health care is prompting insurance companies and premiums to skyrocket while coverage is shrinking. So from oil prices to the housing market to the cost of health care, not to mention the budget battles taking place all across the country, the question we must ask is, can you afford 4 more years? And joining me now with the answer is the author of the brand new best-selling book, Revolt, former Clinton advisor. Dick Morris is back. Dick, welcome back.
Good. Well, the subtitle of the book suggests my answer. It is How to Defeat Barack Obama and Repeal His Socialist Programs. I'll give you one great example. That Geithner quote about the housing industry is in the slumps. Well, why is the President of the United States trying to repeal the home mortgage deduction? Nothing could kill the housing industry more than to adopt his program to repeal that deduction. And when you talk about gas prices, why is he trying to tax carbon emissions, which will disincentivize the use of oil at the same time that he wants to incentivize drilling for oil, or should want to? The whole point about this, Sean, is that the economists said that the recession ended in June of '09, and that seemed stupid because things are still bad, but they're right. This is the new normal. This is the way things are going to be for the rest of our lives if we don't get rid of Obama.
You know, maybe it's what, do you remember when it was Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan who said defining deviancy down? And he was talking about the culture, but in one sense, I think we've now reached the point where, whoa, we finally, when we stop counting people that are unemployed because they stop looking for work, so the unemployment number goes down, but those people are still out there unemployed. You know, it's sort of like, you know, with these new manufactured numbers, you know, our expectations have been so greatly reduced, I guess, at this point. Oh, it's below 9%, but we're not counting 5 million people.
Yeah. Well, I write in Revolt that there are 2 signature accomplishments of this administration. The first is they have reduced the unemployment rate by successfully persuading 5 million people to give up and stop looking for work. And secondly, they've slashed illegal immigration by eliminating the jobs in the United States, so they're not coming in the same numbers.
Yeah. Well, the New York Times, now here's the difference. Republicans want $60 billion in cuts, which, by the way, is 1.6% of overall spending, 4.7% of discretionary spending. Now, on top of that, this is a $3.7 trillion budget. This is really just a drop in the bucket. You know, it's after the Obama administration increased non-discretionary spending, we're literally talking about they raised it 25%. If you add the stimulus, they raised it 85%. You're talking about a minuscule amount And all Democrats could offer this weekend at a maximum is that all they think they can find is $10 billion. So isn't this the showdown for 2012? It's those that want big government, those that want to balance the budget, and it's going to be a head-to-head battle.
It is, and the Republicans have to either shut down or shut up, because at some point the Democrats are going to stop agreeing to cuts, and then the Republicans will still have a long way to go toward their $61 billion of prorated deductions. And in Revolt, I have a very specific proposal, and I hope that people understand that. We didn't get to discuss this last week. In the negotiations, the Republicans are saying, I'm going to cut all kinds of programs, hundreds and hundreds of cuts. And the result is you really can't describe what they are because there are so many of them. What I propose is if the shutdown comes, the Republicans say there are 3 specific programs we are going to eliminate, and that's where all of our cuts will come from. 1, a moratorium on highway construction, new highway construction, not repair and maintenance, but new construction. That saves $30 billion. 2, we're going to stop the Obama program where he pays the debt service on state and local construction bonds. That's $11 billion. And 3, we're going to stop his infrastructure building program. That's 5, which is pork barrel. That's $5 billion. And then you throw in eliminating the subsidy to PBS, the endowment for the humanities, and cutting Congress back to its 2008 levels in spending, and you're there. Yeah. And I believe that that way the Republicans go to the country and say, we're not shutting down the government. We're shutting down 3 unnecessary programs, 0 funding them. And if the Democrats so cling to those programs that they want to shut down the government,
let them do it.
Well, then the onus is on them.
I think that's a good idea, because then there can't be the political backlash. Let me see if I can give some perspective. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think Americans are getting lost in millions, billions, and trillions. 3.7 trillion is a lot. In 3 years, Obama accumulating nearly $5 trillion in debt is a lot of money. At the end of fiscal year 2007, not that long ago, right? Our budget deficit was $161 billion for the year. For the month of February, this past month, the budget for the deficit for the month was $223 billion. Not quite twice, but almost twice what it was for the entire year in 2007. It seems to me that Americans now want, and those conservative governors are being rewarded for fiscal responsibility. So why wouldn't the next presidential candidate for the Republicans get the same benefit?
Oh, they absolutely need to, and the Republicans need to stand firm in this current fight. By the way, I have an idea I'd like to float out there. It's also in Revolt about the gas situation, the gas price. I think that Congress should suspend the collection of the gas tax, and if the gas tax, reduce it. And if the gas price goes above $5, suspend it entirely. And then if it drops down below $4 again, reimpose the gas tax. Releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve undermines our national security. That's why they call it the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But cutting the money for the gas tax stimulates the economy, reduces the impact of this on the average American, and all it does is shrink government.
Yeah. All right, Dick Morris, congrats on the book, and thanks as always for your insight. We appreciate it. Now, we also have Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann coming up tonight, and the word doctor, the one and only Frank Luntz, he's here tonight. He's got more analysis of my new slogan for the 2012 campaign. Also, Mitt Romney heads to New Hampshire, but will his defense of his controversial Massachusetts health care bill, how's that going over? We'll give you those details and much more coming up straight ahead. And tonight we unveiled our new slogan for 2012, Can You Afford 4 More? Now, the word doctor himself, Frank Luntz, will join me in just a minute. We'll get his take on our slogan. But first, to thrill up your leg, Obama mania media, well, they never rest in their quest to divide and conquer the GOP. Now, the latest myth that they're peddling is that the Tea Party will destroy the Republican Party.
But there is this split between Republican leadership and the Tea Party caucus. And who's driving the train here?
That may be the more interesting split in Washington right now. Can Speaker Boehner and Majority Leader Cantor really, frankly, control the rank and file, especially the Tea Party freshmen who might want to slash and burn in a way that does shut down the government, and no one knows the political ramifications of that.
And the more important question in all of this, though, is whether potential Republican presidential candidates can deliver a message that appeals to the Tea Party movement. Now, Mitt Romney tried to come up over the weekend with a message that accounted for his position to Obamacare, but still defending his own universal health care bill in Massachusetts.
States are the place where health care programs for the uninsured should be crafted just as the Constitution provides. Obamacare is bad law constitutionally, it's bad policy, it's bad for American families, and that's one reason why President Obama will be a one-term president.
And joining me now with the answers to that and reaction, the author of the brand new book, Win, pollster, the one and only Frank Luntz. You were saying this, every candidate, top tier, middle tier, lower tier, right now, has questions they're going to have to answer. Is this, for example, in Mitt Romney's case, how did you like that answer?
It was a reasonably good answer because he used the word constitutionality. And in fact, we're going to be seeing a segment where even the Democrats are now starting to talk about the Constitution. That appeals to conservatives, moderates, even slightly to the left, because we don't want things that are done by Washington rules. We want them done by constitutional rules.
All right, for example, what would be the biggest challenge? Newt Gingrich, who was on Friday saying he's about to form the exploratory committee. What would you say his biggest challenge, you think, is?
That he comes from Washington, that he was Speaker of the House at a time when the American people would much rather have a governor.
But they were Speaker of the House at the time they balanced the budget and ended welfare as we know it and did good things. Does that help?
And it's why it helps, and it's why his language, you know, of all the clips that we've shown voters, Newt did the best, but he's still going to have to defend why he's not part of Washington. Every one of these candidates has a weakness, but I want to go to your slogan, because there are 10 rules for good communication in Win. Can you afford 4 more? It's the rhetorical question, number 1. Number 2, the alliteration, or in this case, the rhyme, 4 more. Perfect. Number 3, can you? You've now personalized it. The key in politics is to individualize, personalize.
I spent a lot of time analyzing every word. No, I really didn't. I'm trying to make it, but you're saying it's effective.
I'm saying it's effective. And if you actually read Win or purchased Win, you would
I did.
know
I read
how
the whole
effective
book.
it is. And the last aspect that works is that you not only are
The simple truth is, Frank, go ahead. I read your book.
Very good. Then you should read it. What is the cost to you from Washington? What is Washington doing to you rather than for you? I genuinely say, Sean, that a candidate would do well taking your slogan, but because you've used it, they can't.
No, why not? I'll lend it to them.
You can't.
I'll patent it. I'll trademark it, and I'll share. Listen, this isn't about me. This isn't about my slogan. This is about, you know, I think the country's headed in such a wrong direction. All right, which brings me. So as you look at the top tier, we'll just stick with them today, and then the next time you're on, we'll talk about others. Governor Palin, Huckabee. We talked about Newt and Romney. What are Governor Palin and the difficulties she'll have, or Governor Huckabee?
The challenge for Governor Palin is to prove that she can win, not just in a primary, but win a general election.
She dial tested well for you, too.
She dial tested well, but that was among Republican primary voters. And right now, the #1 priority to Republicans after principle is victory. And they're looking at the person that they want to stand up against Barack Obama in a debate. And while they respect Governor Palin and they empathize for what she's been through, her greatest challenge is winning those swing voters over. And for Mike Huckabee, who's leading, you realize if he doesn't run, he'll be the first candidate in decades to have a clear lead in the national polls and not run for office?
All right, let's go to the Republicans. This is Paul Ryan. Remember, now we have this battle over the budget. We only had a 2-week extension. Now there's going to be a battle. Michelle Bachmann will be here in a minute. But here is Paul Ryan's messaging on the budget.
Our federal government continues to make promises it knows it can't keep. Washington has a spending problem that needs to be fixed. Our continued failure to address this crisis has set us on an unsustainable fiscal path. When my 3 young children are my age, the federal government will consume 40% of our economy. To put this in perspective, our federal government, in order to function, has historically taken roughly 20 cents of every dollar spent in America, made in America. This is where we are today. When my kids are my age, 40 cents of every dollar will be needed just to keep the current government afloat. This will occur with no new programs, no new spending. Double the taxes just to maintain the status quo.
The reason why that's perfect is 3 points. Number 1, Washington has made promises to you that it cannot keep, which frustrates people because they don't want to be told something that's not true. Number 2, he focuses on wasteful Washington spending, which is the single greatest anger that the American people have. And number 3, the failure is going to affect your children and the next generation. 1, 2, 3. That's language perfection.
Well, okay. And this is only the beginning of this message, because they're going to unveil their budget in April, that he was on the program talking about. Now, let's go to the other side, because Harry Reid, Democrats now, as you know, they're saying, well, we might be able to find $6 or $10 billion in cuts. It's a $3.7 trillion budget. And Harry Reid calls for a compromise. Let's see how that message went over.
But I would hope that they would understand what the Constitution is all about. The Constitution itself came about as a result of a compromise called the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise was making sure that we have a legislative branch of government as we have it now, the House and the Senate. Legislation is the art of compromise, and all these people, these new members who are flexing their muscles about all the things they're going to do to the country should understand that we're going to have to continue down the path that we've had for many years, and that is work together to get things done.
Now, the presidential candidates were up at 90.
Right.
And he's down to 50.
I'm going to give him credit here. Work together to get things done, compromise and Constitution.
But it doesn't mean anything in his case, because they're not going to cut anything.
My analysis is of language, not of policy. And that language cuts across partisan lines, because he talks about the constitutionality.
You know what drives me crazy?
You can roll your eyes as much as you want.
This is bumper sticker nonsense.
But it's my job to analyze the language.
I
and
agree.
the language for Harry Reid in that segment does work.
Frank, congrats. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate you being here. And coming up, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann is right here in our studio to expose the $105 billion secret that was buried deep inside the Obamacare bill. And then, if you missed Tiger Blood TV over the weekend, well, we have all the must-see highlights, lowlights, whatever you want to call them, from Charlie Sheen's bizarre webcast. That and more coming up straight ahead. All right, so remember when Nancy Pelosi infamously said that Congress must first pass the health care bill in order to find out what's in it? Well, tonight, I'm sorry to report that it seems that she was right. Now, according to Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, a number of provisions were hidden so deep inside this legislation that most members of Congress are still unaware of their existence. It is a staggering $105 billion in appropriations that were inserted into the bill at the last minute behind closed doors. Now, in this case, the traditional appropriations process was bypassed, meaning that more than $100 billion taxpayer dollars has already been sent to bureaucrats to fund this controversial bill. Now, by engaging in this deceitful process, Democrats like Nancy Pelosi ensured that regardless of the outcome of last November's elections, that the hands of Congress would be tied and Obamacare would be funded no matter what. And here to explain how this was even possible and what Republicans can do to roll it back is Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. You know, when I first heard this, I said, well, I couldn't even believe the story. It's so unbelievable, because Republicans have been saying, all right, if we don't get the president to sign on board in the Senate, we're going to defund it.
Right.
So now you found out through the Congressional Research Service.
Congressional Research Service. There was a report that was issued 2 weeks before the election. No one was really reading Congressional Research reports. And then there's another report issued in February that detailed the $105 billion. And this is an enormous sum of money. Right, so $105,464 million. This was tucked away inside the Obamacare bill. People say, well, what's wrong with you members of Congress? Why didn't you know it's there? It's because we didn't get the bill until literally a couple of hours before we were supposed to vote on it, and it's 2,900 pages long. What they did is they took the bill, this amount of money, split it up and put it in different sections of the bill. Nobody knew until February when it came out. We had an eagle eye from the Heritage Foundation. Ernest Istook, a former member of Congress, found this in this report. He wrote a few blog posts. One of my colleagues, Steve King from Iowa, also found out about this, and we've been trying to do everything we can to alert people and say, give the money back.
Well, first of all, how breathtaking is it that you can insert it in a 3,000-page bill and lose $105 billion in the process, and nobody picks up on it?
Well, I think this was intentional, don't you?
Yeah,
I mean, do you think that Harry Reid, this just like escaped his memory to tell the senators, oh, by the way, if you vote for Obamacare, you're also voting for another $105 billion
Were they that pessimistic that December when they passed this that they'd lose?
Well, I think they knew. I think this was intentional. I think that's why I say Obama, Reid, and Pelosi, they owe us an apology and an explanation, but they need to give the money back. This is the good news. The bad news is Obamacare is pre-funded for the next 8 years. the implementation. We thought if we can't repeal it, at least
defund it.
Yeah, at least we could defund
So you're
it.
telling
now we
people
can't
now
defund
that
it.
you cannot defund it.
No, it's done.
So
it's done.
There's no way to remedy this?
Yes, there is. That's the good news. Okay, now the good news is we've got this 2-week continuing resolution. Government runs out of money on March 18th. This is what we propose. We've written language to add on to the next continuing resolution that says, Obama, Pelosi, Reid, you give this money back. You didn't tell the American people. You didn't tell the Senate. You didn't tell the House. Give the money back, and then we'll start talking about the budget. This is the first thing.
Is the leadership in agreement with you on this? In other words, will all the Republicans in the House hold the line, meaning you will shut down the government unless this money that they inserted to fund Obamacare is given back?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about this week when we go back to Washington, D.C. I just want to encourage your listeners. You can go to either my website, I'm Michelle Bachmann, or my Facebook site. We're going to have regular updates, so go there for regular updates.
Have you spoken to the leadership about it?
I have spoken to the leadership, and we're going to have a meeting tomorrow at 5:30 at the Capitol to explain. A lot of members don't even know about this yet, this outrage.
Now,
so
also you found out that Kathleen Sebelius has, what, a $16 billion slush fund?
Oh, this is incredible. Section 402 of the bill. She has a $16 billion slush fund. That means she can do whatever she wants with this money. She can reach in, tap it, spend it any way she wants.
$16 billion?
Oh, it gets worse than that, Sean. In Section 1311A, she has the right to an unlimited tap on the Treasury Department. So if, let's say, California, that's in a financial mess, they can call her up and say, guess what? We need more money to put in these private health exchanges. Maybe, $30 billion. She can say sure thing without coming back to Congress.
I thought Congress appropriated money. So they're saying that they
so did the Constitution.
But where do they get the idea that they can appropriate unlimited amounts of money? That's unconstitutional.
They gave themselves that authority. In my mind, that's unconstitutional.
I just can't believe nobody picked up on this.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Well, why do you think Speaker Pelosi wouldn't let us read the bill? Why do you think Harry Reid wouldn't give the senators the bill until just hours ahead of time? Remember, not one Republican voted for Obamacare in the Senate or House. Only Democrats did.
We're running out of time, and I've got to ask you a political question because you are considering a run for the presidency.
Well, I haven't made a decision if I will, and I haven't made a decision if I won't.
All right, but that means you are considering it. I'm not trying to press you, but if you're not saying yes or no, that means you're thinking about it. So.
I'm going to these early primary states because these issues are so important. I want to make sure that in the midst of looking at all the candidates, we aren't forgetting the issues. I'm getting people who are encouraging me to make the decision, but I haven't made a decision.
Okay, but let me see if I can ask it another way. You are thinking about it.
Well, it is something, like I said, I haven't decided to, and I haven't decided not to.
You know, I interview a lot of Democrats, and I'm
not being cute here.
No,
I'm telling
you,
this is what I'm worried about right now.
But
again, people can go to my Facebook site, go to my website, get regular updates, but this is huge. Tell them to give the money back. And the good news is, we can undo Obamacare, but we've got less than 2 weeks to get the money back. Let's do it now.
Congresswoman, good to see you. Welcome to New York, and welcome to the studio. And coming up next, he may be out of a job at CBS, but Charlie Sheen already has a new opportunity. We're going to play clips of the actor's bizarre weekend webcast. That and much more. Our Great American Panel with Beckel coming up straight ahead. Well, now it's official. Warner Brothers announced earlier today that it has officially terminated Charlie Sheen from 2.5 Men, effective immediately. Of course, it did not take long for Sheen to respond. The Associated Press says the actor indicated he will likely sue his now former production company. Now, this news follows another, bizarre weekend in the world of this actor, during which he debuted Sheen's Corner, a new online web series starring none other than Mr. Tiger Blood himself. Let's check it out.
Don't think, just know. Know that I'm better solo. Yeah, I am solo. I invented solo. You know, there was like 2 guys in a plane, and one of them jumped out and said, it's Charlie Sheen, it's called Solo. I'm gonna write my sermons, I'm gonna deliver them like truth torpedoes, and people are gonna take it or leave it. We know they're gonna take it because they can't process it, so they must condemn it. And if they can't condemn it, like turn me into a god and worship it, and then realize that I'm behind them, cutting their throat. Last night was a shameful train wreck filled with like blind, cuddly puppies.
And joining me now with reaction, Fox News medical contributor Dr. Keith Abloh and executive editor of the Fix.com, a website dedicated to addiction and recovery, Anna David. All right, Dr. Abloh, one thing that that Charlie says, I may actually agree with you. You've never seen him. You've never treated him. We're just seeing what he's doing on TV. Is it fair as a doctor to stand back and make an analysis of his condition?
Well, I don't think we can diagnose him because I haven't interviewed him in person. But still, you can look at what he's saying, the rapidity of his speech, the pressured flight of ideas. No longer are there comic gems coming out of his mouth. There's kind of an angry, irritable rant. These things are consistent either with drug abuse, and again, I'm not picking from among these, or bipolar disorder, the high phase, or extreme narcissism, but we wouldn't call them genius anymore. It seems to me now that he's on the losing side of that winning streak.
What do you think, Anna?
I never saw a winning streak myself. I have to say that, you know, to me, I think it's really sad. I think we're watching a guy, you know, we're sort of rooting on as he falls apart and possibly will die at the end of this. And, you know, the guy is a drug addict, and no one's really talking about that. They're talking about Tiger's Blood and winning and warlocks and all of these things, and I think it's actually really incredibly sad.
The thing that concerns me the most is what you said, and I've said this. It's funny. I think one of the reasons why, you know, people are getting tattooed and these websites and T-shirts and hats and all this Charlie memorabilia, Tiger Blood, winning, all that stuff is popular is because, you know what? People are fed up with political correctness. And he's just sitting there and he's letting it rip and he's letting it fly and he's taking on his boss and all this stuff. You know, it's sort of like take this job and shove it. And there's an appeal to that. What bothers me in all that he said and in his actions is when he said he could blow 7 grams at one time, which I'm told is a lot, and that dying is for losers and amateurs. There may be a sense that he will not be a victim, and if he is using drugs or did, because he's tested positive, negative recently, that would scare me, and then their kids would lose a father. But short of that, you know, that's the only thing I fear for him, Dr. Abloh.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Look, I feel for him because the flip side of this euphoria and grandiosity is, I believe, incredible sadness and questions about whether he's worth anything, whether he's worth any kind of love at all. Deep, dark questions that eventually you got to confront because the truth always wins in the end. Look, Sean, in some ways this is a mundane story of a guy who's a drug addict, who's lost his job, who's lost custody of his kids. It's the story of detox units all over
Dr.
America.
Abloh, in fairness to him, do you know that he's a drug addict? Do you know? I mean, we've heard the incidents at the Plaza in New York. I see Anna laughing. I don't know why. But do you know for a fact he's taken these drug tests?
Well, no,
and he's been negative?
In this way, Sean, I'm just taking him at his word. He says this is the way he rolls, as you said, with 7-gram rocks of cocaine, saying, in fact, that he doesn't believe that his heart can fail him. He doesn't believe he can suffer a cardiac event because he has tiger blood. Now, if I were in California and a psychiatrist and listening to that, I would hospitalize him against his will. I'm not a California psychiatrist, or I would.
Let me go to another one of these rants from this weekend and get you both to comment.
Kind of an early image. I'm burning my own face, but I can't feel the heat because I don't feel pain, because pain is a myth. Pain is as painful as you want it to be. To quote the late, great, brilliant, alien, non-human George Carlin, I've already got pain. I don't need pain pills. I need anti-pain pills.
Now, Anna, you chronicled in your book, and we discussed this a long time ago, about how bad did your life get?
I would say not as bad as this. You know, alcoholism addiction is a self-diagnosed disease, so I wasn't laughing before. You know, I can't diagnose him any more than Dr. Abloh can, but, you know, he sure does seem like an addict, and I think, you know, one of the major tenets of recovery is that you're just like everybody else. You know, it takes people from jail and people from Yale, and I mean, everything he's putting out there is the direct opposite of that, and I agree with Dr. Abloh, though, that I can hear that he really believes the opposite in everything he's saying.
He seems like he's in pain to me. It seems like he's conflicted to me. What makes you think, Dr. Abloh, that you are watching him and you can see addiction? What is it about his behavior? Because I can't see it. I mean, I don't know. In other words, I don't have the answer. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, as I said, listen, you can take your pick from narcissism, extreme narcissism, the high phase of bipolar disorder, mania, or addiction. I can't say right now. I can only say that the guy tells me he does 7 grams of cocaine, which, you know, a big Saturday night for a lot of people is half a gram. So you can do the arithmetic there. But the bottom line is when somebody says, I feel no pain, Sean, I'm telling you, that's somebody who's in incredible denial of really deep suffering. And you can't avoid it forever. Not with girls, not with drugs, not with gambling, not with fame.
Got to run. Thank you both for being with us. Anna, we'll get back to you next time.
Thanks, brother.
We're running out of time.
Okay.
All right. Let not your heart be troubled. Our great, great, great American panel is next. And tonight on our great, great American panel, he is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Fox News contributor, USA Today columnist. I got a present for you in a minute. Bob Beckel is here. She was the National Press Secretary for Mike Huckabee's presidential campaign. Alice Stewart, once again, is with us. Good to see you. And he is a Republican, Texas Congressman. The one and only Louis Gohmert is here. Louis, how are you, buddy?
Great to be with you.
Good to see you. Maybe you want to present this to Bob. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann was just here. Give the money back to Bob with love, Michelle Bachmann. Right there.
She
signed it for you.
I'm honored. I really am. I'm just moved to tears. Thank you, Michelle.
So in the process of that 3,000-page bill, they don't tell everybody that they funded it for the next 8 years, and they suckered the American people because we had to pass the bill before we found out what's in it, right, Louis?
That's it.
Congressman? Yeah.
Actually, I went through most of it, but I was not looking at the numbers, did not realize it had been appropriated in that bill. It's incredible.
Well, I'll tell you what, speaking with her backstage, she is fired up about it. And I think the more she gets fired up, she's going to energize people across this country. This kind of thing should not happen. And what we need to be doing is looking at how Obamacare was funded and get rid of it. And we also need to be looking at what the president is doing about the budget. And he's not doing anything about the outrageous expenditures
look, the bottom line is Republicans have you have the power in the House to stop this, don't you?
We have the power to stop it, but this requires House and Senate to rescind it.
Okay.
Again, a president to sign it.
But they need money to run the government. Do you think that the leadership will join with Michelle and shut down the government?
Well, nobody on our side really wants to shut down the government, but this is so important.
Look at him smirking.
So important. I mean, well, I'll tell you what, $105 billion, you're going to get more government than you ever dreamed of.
Hey, Louis, you did not fall off the turnip truck last night, neither did you, and neither did you. They appropriate money in authorization bills all the time in Congress. It's been going on 30 years. And the fact of the matter is this $105 million includes, among other things, helping sick children at their homes. Home health care.
But that's the problem.
Creation.
Okay,
so
we need
this
to
is as usual.
Go ahead, finish your thought. Stop being a cry. Come on.
I'm not being a crybaby. Let me put it this way. I'll end my part of this discussion with this. It's the law of the land. Live with it.
No, it's going to be repealed because all those things you're talking about, those are nice, but we need to make tough decisions on how we should spend our money, and those are just simply not sustainable, and we need to make sure that the administration looks at all the entitlement spending and cut that out.
Let me run a tape. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown comparing Republicans challenging unions to Hitler and Stalin. Roll the tape.
I look back in history, in some of the worst governments we've ever had. You know that one of the first things they did? They went after the trade unions. Hitler didn't want unions. Stalin didn't want unions. Mubarak didn't want independent unions. These autocrats in history don't want independent unions. I'm not comparing what's happening to the workers in Madison or in Columbus to Hitler and Stalin, but I am saying that history teaches us that unions are a very positive force in society that creates a middle class and that protects our freedom.
Why did these analogies keep coming up?
Well, first of all, he did not compare Republicans with Hitler and so. Well, you say kind of did.
I look back in history and some of the worst governments we had. Stalin didn't want unions. Mubarak didn't want Hitler. Didn't want unions.
It would behoove everybody not to go back historically and look at certain figures. Although I will say this about the governor of Wisconsin: the last person that took collective bargaining away was Karl Marx. I won't call him a Marxist.
FDR didn't want it for you.
No, wait a second. That's wrong.
Not for government.
That's all revisionist history. You guys.
That's not true.
He did not want it for public safety employees who do not have it now.
What they have a hard time understanding is they're calling critics of unions and the collective bargaining process, they're calling them Stalin and Hitler. They don't seem to understand unions and collective bargaining. That's not a right. That's a privilege.
It's a right.
Unions were created to address potential corporate greed because there was a problem. But now in this country, the founders created it such that we, the people, are the government. You don't need a union to be against we, the people.
Look. The Constitution guarantees us the right to freedom of assembly. And if we want to assemble together to put our labor on the line and negotiate with the government or a corporation or you or Congress or anybody else, we're going to have the right to do it. It is a right. It is not a privilege. It is a right. And if you all take that right away from us, then you're going to have a real problem on your hands.
The Constitution says nothing about
mandatory dues. Republicans keep assaulting this. You keep assaulting collective bargaining. You're taking away our rights, and you're going to pay a big price for it.
Let's let the unions have the freedom to choose whether to join or not.
We'll let everyone go back to their neutral corners. We'll come back, and we'll pick up that debate. More with our Great American Panel next. Continue now with our Great American Panel. Sherrod Brown did compare Republicans to Hitler. And let me read it to you, Bob, because this is not a small thing. They went after the trade unions. I look back in history and some of the worst governments we've ever had. You know, the first things they did, Hitler didn't want unions. Stalin didn't want unions. Mubarak didn't want unions. Well, who's he talking about, Bob? He's talking about Republican. He's talking about Scott Walker, John Kasich, and he's comparing them to Hitler.
By the way, I talked to John Kasich for an hour on Sunday. He called me at home to talk about this union thing.
He must be really bored on the weekend.
Let me put it this way, or he could have called you.
Yeah.
It would have been a much shorter conversation. I understand where they're coming from. I understand that there's a lot of unfunded mandates out there, and they're stuck with a lot of problems.
$8 billion shortfall.
But let us also keep in mind that these were signed by politicians, Democrats and Republicans. The state of Texas has a lot of...
the Defense of Marriage Act.
The state of Texas
signed it, and with this administration,
I'm talking, wait a minute. You know, you've got teacher pensions in Texas that are huge on down the road, and those were signed by a lot of Republicans in the state of Texas. Now, so
we put money in real
all of a sudden we're blaming unions for things that public officials had the opportunity to say no.
And that's what they're doing now.
Well, fine. If they're saying it now, then negotiate it now. But they didn't then. You can't just go back and say, now that we've given you this, we're going to take it away from you.
Louis had the greatest defense to you. Here, by supermajorities in the House and Senate, Defense of Marriage Act passed. Bill Clinton threw it into law. Eric Holder, the president, say they're not going to defend the law of the land. He's acting like, you know, judge, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch.
And when you come back, though, to the Constitution does, as you so aptly said, guarantee a freedom of assembly. It does not guarantee anywhere in there that you can suck money out of union workers' pay and have that as your own to spend on politics that you want.
And the key with what the governor was doing there was trying to make sure that these public employees unions, they could decide whether or not they wanted to be a part of a union without the fear of losing their job.
They have no right to ask anybody whether they want to be a member of a union or not. It is a right. It is not a privilege. I go back to the Defense of Marriage Act. I know of, there's not a Republican administration that I know of that would go into court to defend the Fair Labor Practices Act. That has been, every president does not send his Justice Department in to defend acts that they don't particularly like. There's no law that says they have to do it. And when they did, they'll go in and talk about Taft-Hartley if you're a Republican, but when you talk about the National Fair Labor Practices Act, which was a Democratic act that established unions, Republican presidents do not go in and defend it. So let's not pick out Obama on this one.
I think
but Obama said he's not going to uphold the law of the land.
No, not uphold the law of the land. He's not going to defend it in court.
Let's imagine a President Palin or a President Gingrich or a President Huckabee or Romney, and they decide that they don't think Roe v. Wade should be the law of the land.
They don't have to go into court and defend it.
So they won't go into court and defend it, but they're going to say that publicly. And you don't think liberals in this country would be screaming with indignation and outrage?
Wait a minute, Sean. I do not know a single Democratic or Republican president who ever had his Justice Department defend Roe v. Wade.
Well, they defended this for 2 years, by the way. That's the interesting part.
Well, Reagan said it well. Government was created to protect us from each other. Where it's gone wrong is when it started protecting us from ourselves.
Well, Louis,
we don't need that. We need the freedom to choose.
Let's talk about, you raised an issue. Let's talk about it, if we could, for a second. I think both of y'all, the Republicans and Obama, and everybody, that's right, it's being around you, Louis, it's really wearing off on me. But listen, the fact of the matter is that this cutting of $61 billion isn't going to cut it. The Democrats will only go $20 billion. You may have a shutdown of government, but in the end, you're going to have to deal with entitlements. We know that. And why everybody is kicking around the bush on this thing, and the only way it's going to happen is both of them. It's about politics. He's not good. Look, we bet a lot of hay on entitlements.
Don't generalize that. Some of us are ready to deal with all of
these. But he's not addressing entitlements, and the Republicans are standing firm. They do not want to shut down the government. They do want to cut the budget. And the Obama
and deal with entitlements.
Why didn't these freshmen bring out entitlements when they went to $61 billion and took kids off a head start?
Because this isn't their budget. This is last year's budget.
Say we're going to cut it?
They've been talking about reforms to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. That's what Republicans have been trying to do. Obama will not.
He gives a good speech, but he added money.
Why don't you sign that and donate it to charity?
I certainly will.
Hold it up for everybody. Quick, we only have 6 seconds.
That's fine.
That's all the time we have left. Give the money back. Greta's up next. We'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for being with us.